I'm Genevieve Koester. My maiden name is, I was born Genevieve Harrison, and married in 2009 to Smith Koester, who is the owner of Barnstorm Mastering, where we're doing the interview. We live in Chicago now. I'm originally from Charleston, Illinois, which is about 3 hours straight south of here. And that's where my dad and uncles grew up, and his side of the family has been there since anybody can remember, basically. So my family's been in Charleston for a really long time. My cousin and my mom and a bunch of family still live there. My uncle too. And I learned to play the fiddle from my dad, Gary Harrison, and yeah, I learned to play the fiddle from my dad. I grew up going to festivals and dances and things like that, but I didn't really express an interest in playing music or having anything to do with it until about 2003. I graduated from college and I'm not really sure why, but I guess by that point, when you're younger, you don't want to do what your parents are doing because it's not cool, and you want to do your own thing. And so by the time you graduate from college, you can take a step back and look at your parents in a different way and see how cool they are and start hanging out with them and playing music with them. So that's kind of what I did. And my mom plays the fiddle as well, and both my parents play the fiddle, and she plays mandolin. And my dad is he can play the banjo and the guitar and fiddle, and he took an interest in all kinds of weird Finnish instruments and bowed lyres and ukulelens and zithers, and he actually restored a huge collection of zithers and donated them to the Musical Instrument Museum in Phoenix, Arizona, and so they're housed there now. So that's pretty cool. He's just he's a real tinkerer, and he just would spend a lot of his time in his wood shop and restoring instruments, finding instruments, getting instruments on eBay and fixing them up to play them. His whole thing, he's not a collector per se of instruments because he always wants them to be playable and in working order. So it's not necessarily just to collect them. It's to hear what they sound like and hear what they, might have sounded like years ago. So the basic music of Southern Illinois is, I would say there's kind of two types. There's just dance music, which is fiddle, banjo, guitar, which was for the function of playing for square dances, just traditionally, historically. And then there's also a fair amount of singing, ballad singing, unaccompanied. And the dance music there, and in the book, which I'll talk about later, there's hoedowns and schottisches and waltzes, and there's a different variety of dance music, and they each have a specific kind of dance that goes with them, but it's primarily doesn't have singing because, a caller would be telling people what the moves to do, and singing would clash with that, so it's just straight music. And then that's, I would say, kind of in general, from my perspective, in my opinion, the difference between old time and bluegrass music is that old time music is still you could play it for a square dance, and that's its primary function, whereas bluegrass is more of a performance, and incorporates singing and electric instruments and things like that. So anyway, the book that I'm talking about is Gerald Illinois, that my dad and his musical partner and life partner, Joe Burgess, she and he published this book in 2009, and it's a huge compilation of both songs and fiddle music from Central and Southern Illinois that's compiled from my dad's field recordings of fiddlers and musicians, and then the recording, or the collection of David McIntosh, who was a professor at SIU back in the 50s, and his primary interest was vocal music, was ballads and songs and things like that. So they got the permission of his family to combine them because it was a perfect match of instrumental music and songs and lyrics and things like that. So their powers combined, I think they're pretty a pretty comprehensive sampling of the traditional old-time music of downstate Illinois. Yeah.
So when you started to play, what was it about this kind of music that drew you to it?
I'm not really sure. Honestly, I don't know. I guess I just, I was lucky that I had parents who played this music and had been playing it and had gotten it in my head from a very early age. So I think once I took an interest, it was easy to keep that, to magnify it, multiply it, keep it going. I guess when I was in college, I went to Loyola University Chicago, so I was up in Rogers Park from 99 to 2003. I was mostly interested in like indie rock music, electric music, kind of a completely off-the-wall different type of music, and I didn't play any of it. I just, as a listener, as, sort of a social element, that's kind of a cultural thing in Chicago. A lot of people go to rock concerts and things like that, so I guess but I never really had an interest in playing. Like, I never, ever played that music. So then when I kind of came to realize, well, what kind of music do I want to play? And then when I was home, when I was visiting my dad, I think I asked, can I borrow a fiddle? Just like, not any, just like a beater. This is something you don't care about. Can I borrow it and try to play it? And see if I can play it, And so then I did, and so that was when, like, email, was the main kind of form of communication. Not really, there wasn't any, I think Facebook hadn't, like, Friendster, any of that stuff hadn't really taken off yet. But anyway, so I would ask my dad to make me tapes, like cassette tapes of, because it wasn't even easy to, like, record something and email it yet. So I would ask him to make me cassette tapes of stuff I could learn. And so then I would learn a tune, and then I would call him up on the phone and play it back to him, and kind of, like, we'd be pen pals that way, and then whenever I'd see him, then we would, play together. And I also, when I was in, I guess I should go back, in junior high, I learned to play the guitar to back him up. So he could play fiddle and I could play guitar, and it was something cool we could do together. And guitar is pretty cool. It's, it's kind of it can go anywhere, do anything kind of instrument. And so I learned to play guitar that way, and then got into like Beatles and all the different kinds of acoustic guitar music. And so I had that connection with it a little bit earlier in life. And so then when I started playing old time music, I at least knew how to play the guitar and could jam and, be in social situations with this kind of music. And that's basically, what it was. It was our family time, our relaxation, socializing, just getting together with my uncles and my cousin and my mom too. Just, that was our main thing was just to have family time. So.
Is it still a big part of your, family structure and culture?
Yeah. So my husband Smith and I met at the Indiana Fiddlers Gathering in Lafayette, Indiana, which is next weekend. But it's always the last weekend in June, and he plays the banjo and I play the fiddle, and so that's kind of how we met and how our whole relationship got started. And actually, just as a friendship, we just started playing music together, not even romantically. Like, that was the first way we knew each other, was playing music. And then we started dating, and then we got married. So it was sort of, and then now we have a baby. So yeah, it's always been a very social family time for me, and now for my family. It's been hard. I think I mentioned that my dad passed away really suddenly in like the fall of 2012, and so it's been hard to carry on the tradition without it being a little bit sad for everybody, because I think a lot of people in the old time community really knew him and loved him as I did, and so it's still, I think it's very important for me. I feel a sense of needing and wanting to carry it on, but it's hard. It's really hard when that's been like your main connection to the music has been through people, and you lose one of those people. So, yeah.
Yeah. As you carry on this tradition and your father's legacy, how do you see the music changing?
That's a good question. Well, one reason I think a lot of people in the old-time community loved my dad was that he composed or wrote or made up or thought up an entire canon of new tunes. So that's like the most exciting thing for a lot of people in the old-time community, because traditional music is, I mean, it's existed for so long for a reason. They're great, so many great tunes that are older than dirt. But in like, I think 99, 2000, or 98 maybe, Dad released an album called Red Prairie Dawn, and it was, I think, 20 tunes, all instrumental, no singing. 4 of them were traditional, and the rest were his originals. And that's another thing that's out of print right now that I'd like to reissue. It's a little bit more to do, but I mean, out of print in addition to Gerald Illinois. But in any case, a lot of people in the old-time community still play his tunes, like have always played it. They've gotten around to a lot of the festivals, and he always got a huge kick out of walking around and hearing a tune of his, being played by somebody else, or just feeling that he had contributed to the old-time, canon of tunes that people were playing. So there's been a couple of people even outside of old-time music. Like I think if you look at online, there's clips of like a jazz guitar player playing the tune, the title track, Red Prairie Dawn, and like Daryl Anger and a bunch of people who are sort of even in further circles that have been playing some of his tunes, which is really, he absolutely loved. So I think just that's one way that he enriched the whole field of old-time music. But other than that, I mean, in what way do you mean change? Like,
well, I guess anyway, we've spoken to several people who play old-time fiddle, and we were speaking with, Vesta Johnson, and of course she's playing, almost the same way she was playing 70 years ago, I guess. And so, I mean, you're of a different generation, and so as you, play with your peers, I wonder if anything is starting to, if you're noticing any sort of evolution within the music, or if not, or if it's not changing so much.
I think strictly on a personal note, I'm sort of at that very question too, because I have been, I mean, the way that I learned this music was literally learning the tunes from my dad, and many people have said we play very similarly, which I take as the biggest compliment of all time. But it wasn't about improvisation or variations or anything. It's just strictly, learning the tunes as sort of in the same way that they're played to you, in a sort of sense. And so for me, that's the way I've always learned, and not to say that in the future that won't change, but it's just sort of the way that I have approached it. So it's hard for me, because I'm the last person to ask, because I just play how I play. I don't really think about it that way, like how, I guess the one funny thing for me is, like, now we have a child, a bunch of our other friends have kids, and so I think it's exciting to even conceptualize the generation beyond me, and maybe who knows what they'll do with this music. So